mani padme hum mani padme hum mani padme hum mani padme hum mani padme hum.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
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 Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Dineda nga zu de wa je ta zo karsena nga zo da chu chiya ke ko zawan da de kar치는 nga zo chu chigi yore slabdu je ta nga zo ji ten di kinang la da ji ndo wa mai na ri ndo ma za mai be ke ji tundo yin yang ji 코랑소 즉 대완도 와다 동간면도 와 그러와 대인들이 대외기 치도를 빼 강에 남바 나서지 자기요래 대인들이 다 동간면도 외시도 즉 동간 마용 외게 즉 답시 남바 나서 책도 즉 루다도 소인비나 즉 뭐네 다고 휴직다 고 knowledge 요마리는 고 투노 그러와 즉 토야 다다 제젠틴디 달레부티네 코베 지 남타치 지 투기요레 티지 카르스나 지 코랑케 지 동해들 토야 지바들 토야 기치들라 테리지 제대기 요로와 틴디인도 땅아서 티 직파직창에 틴디 나도 가르치고 거잖아 추치야 대양 드네 지 대치 응야제 기치도 지요레 직된디 나라 지 깔레자 롭중치 레칼레 빼셔서 대양 지기거리 대체야 대양
직든 공탈라 가래. 직든 라가래.
배는 직된디 나라 위는 직된으로 직된 발드는 가서 배 롭중 지기거리 와 깔레 휴자 롭중 빼 지기거리 대가 나이베 레카 깔레 가고 빼 레기거리 아직 빼셔서 기거리 딘디 제야게 때 가르치는 지기거리 슬라위나 직 조 챈들라야 지보용야 대보용야 티니제 기치들라 갈레자 되거와 대가나 이지 동해 마용야 알아와 동해 만도 외신 동해 마용야 티니지네 맞아 답이 지거래 딱 같아네 답이 통구요래 지 빼나 차샤야 동해 마용 답이 가지고는 지 맞아 다단 나사 나소나 인슈런스 온다 오다 테네지 리타이어먼트 손다 오다다 도저지 고마운 베키지 동해 마용야 기치들라 지 동해에서 동원해야 기치들라 아주 강해 잡으러 와 어디인데 다 대가 나이게 나도 추우데 대가랑래 추지야 대양 되네 지 네캅로 와 아주 대치로야 다에 섬노 약보 당비나 지 추지야 대양 네캅양 지 챈들라 되네 지 루양 지보요와 세면 배워요와 대가는 이게 지 챈데 지부만이 봐 지 치마양 되네 가서 지 내벨람 지류양 지 세치마라양 지워요 다 되네지 지들라 가서 주책이요래 스티니다 가서 주체야 그 고파 줌센도데 되네지 하고고 이래스
So to begin with, generally speaking, what is the main reason that pulls us to practicing Dharma? So why, what is the root of our seeking? So the reason is because everyone in this world wants to be happy. All of the human beings are seeking happiness, and also the non-human beings are seeking happiness. So the objective that is driving all beings is to find some satisfaction, to find some happiness or sense of well-being or pleasure. And nobody wants to have suffering. So it is always kind of pulled between these two, seeking happiness and pushing away or trying to avoid pain and suffering. And so based on that objective or that underlying, sort of constant desire is we endure all sorts of difficulties and hardships trying to achieve that goal. So we employ all sorts of different methods trying to achieve that goal. But what's beneath all of those methods is this very simple pull towards or trying to seek or get a hold of happiness and trying to push away or avoid suffering. And we can see this in animals too, not just in human beings, but even if you observe animals who don't really have a very complex or developed intelligence, they still are fleeing from danger or fleeing from suffering, trying to get free of suffering and seeking what is like happiness or enjoyment. So for instance, if an animal senses that they are in danger, they run away from the source of that danger because that is identified as a cause of suffering. And so we're exactly the same in this way. We're always seeking some source of happiness. And that's why we really do all that we do. In a worldly sense, we study and build qualities, or we endure all sorts of hardships, and we work and so forth, trying to
education, go to education, they have to do also.
So we seek an education to get a degree, or we work very hard to accumulate money. And why? Because we want to have a good life. We want to have a pleasant life, or we want to be happy. And we don't want suffering to come. We want to avoid suffering. And so there are all of these different methods and things that we do to avoid suffering. So for instance, taking care of our health, trying to avoid illness, buying insurance so that we can be sure that we can get the necessary health care that we need should we become ill, saving for retirement, and all of these things. Really, everything that we do in life is really with the goal of trying to have a good life. And with the Dharma, this is also doesn't change. We enter the Dharma seeking some lasting happiness, seeking some real fulfillment, and so nekap degi druya chuchia tsedi. And so both by practicing Dharma, we create the causes for both temporary and ultimate or lasting happiness. So we can create the causes for happiness to come in this life, and both physically and mentally or emotionally. And also we create the causes for future happiness in future lives, and as well as the ultimate unchanging happiness that is based on, or that comes with a liberation and full awakening.
어쨌든 어떤 지야대 하고 그래 같이 있으나 주 지야대야 에 신디기 에 기지 내고용야 기지도다 동아마용야 기치도 초조고요래 대인도 가서 너바 직발에 이내양 직템비게 제 두야디 포커스 가지고서나 제 external thing와 아직 시긴 튠첸라 때네 아직 내지 두야라 쇼자고요래 대인도 대양 고그래 진tun장 가서 사야 고그래 동야 고그래 매 고그래 대고 고그래스 이내야 담배 추두야데 틀리지 deeper way와 즉 치게 튠첸 게 즉 대화티 마토비아 치긴 튠첸라 때네 눈에 까마토야 뭐뭐 휴지 요르다 근데 인도 카스나 추
직진하디 졸라도 사이에 살에 어디 나를 힘을 오케이 Okay, tene the damchu deeper way chi tungin dewa
리 친 튠첸게 베나 친 튠첸로지 이나 tene 직다 고네갑 기대지 용투브로와 이내야 지 친튠첸라 때네 카세고다 지 대화차 상황지 뒤투고요 말이라 대가 나이게 지 농알게 그 저당 대화지 까투고요 말이 근데 인도 땅아서 지 키게 drop 마토야 돼 나샘게 토네 drop 투고 추치도 tene 제 원에 타네 지 대완도 나기 그 대외 주요야 지 저당지 뭐 drop 해와 제다 tene 지 동알만도 와 힌도 동알 그 주디 그 저당지 바로와 지 까토 바와다 tene 제가 tene 담배 추스 아주 주르비아 아세야 다 줌세 단도 차디오레스
so So we practice Dharma in order to find lasting happiness and to overcome suffering. But in a worldly sense, when we're seeking happiness and trying to avoid suffering, this is really on a kind of superficial level. And we're seeking this through outer objects, through fulfillment in or gratification in outer objects or conditions. And of course, we do need to do what is necessary to make sure that we do have a certain amount of outer conditions present, or that we we need to eat, we need to be hydrated, we need food to eat, and water to drink, and we need medicine if we to stay healthy. But really, the Dharma creates the causes for happiness to come about in a much deeper way. Because there's only a certain amount of happiness and fulfillment that can come from outer conditions or outer objects. And so even if we have all that we desire externally, even if all of those conditions that we wish for are present, there is only a certain level that that happiness can go to. It can't really cause us to have a complete and thorough fulfillment or satisfaction. There's always an underlying sense of dissatisfaction, no matter how much we have, no matter how much we're able to accomplish in this life. And so when we practice the Dharma, rather than seeking fulfillment through outer objects, we are looking at the mind. We are turning the mind within, and we are really addressing the real cause of happiness. And once we understand the real cause of happiness, then we are able to create those causes and to really fully identify and uproot the causes of suffering, or those causes that lead to conditions that cause us to suffer.
어다 텐드 지기다 담배 개추
Okay.
드네 담배 추도야 돼 자체 모래다 담배 추 드롭 정도야 간디 지고스나 조 가르스나 가조다 남주 처민 챙겨 지금 저 당부 토바지 야 드네 드네 토바티 기지라 드네 지 삼지리 티 통다 가림바 삼 드네 디삼 차베 휴라 드네 통다든 가지고 공고로 와 라로 토를 냠내 치고 그래스.
So to really have the methods available to practice and accomplish the sublime Dharma is so precious and extraordinary. So how is it that we go about practicing the Dharma? As you all know, this really occurs based on sort of three aspects of practice. There's the aspect of study, or what we also refer to as listening or hearing. And then once we listen or we hear, we gather some understanding based on study or listening. Then we have the basis for contemplation. So then we engage in contemplation or reflection by thinking about or pondering or contemplating what is the real meaning of what we have learned, of what we have, the understanding that we have gathered through study. And then to really have that understanding take root and fully penetrate our mind stream, then we engage in meditation, which is really something that we develop based on, just our own body-mind continuum actually coming to discover or realize these profound and innate truths.
데니 다 든디 토섬 검섬 지 야마데베 지네 다 가리야 가리미 유치고 그런 거다 가르지 타겟 들어와 지 밴드 마송네 가르리다 미유 가라메 거리 송비나 데네 다 좋은 것도 당이 공투가 나기리 나좀 코로나 처음 람나리 나저게 라지 코로바디다 능이로와 저 능이 용세야지 여러와 능이 용세야다 지 배대 코르솔지 가레디 피폰 그러와 pain point.
Pinpoint?
Yes.
Okay.
pain point 당가서 직배 찌지 우리가 수레다 중사 수레 짜와 수레 람나 당지 세야다 다든 짐바 세야되다 다든 짐바 틀을 때네 땅가서 강했나 봐나 소바지 연구요다 강의 연구요래 등의 연구요래 다디 고파 줌센데 카스나 직 당지티 메와티 단다랑 소투고 말이 이나야 썸노 땅지 당지 틀을 때네 직 땅가서 용바다 지용고로 직 다든 짐바 틀을 때네 직다 해당 틀을 때네 연구요래 차도 틀을 때네 연구요래 드네 심지 틀을 때네 연구요래 뭐다 등의 기절이 다 등의 기절에서 심지나 등의 기절이 차도이나 등의 기절이 나제이나 등의 기절이 어다 등의 기절이 효사 파파 대응들가 당지 토리어와 대인들 당아서 추도 토상검서 미 지야디 칼레지 삼노 땅지 되네 근데 당지트 단다라메 바차야 요 말이 they take low better low than low 되리 월세기리 이나 미유데 고 칼레지 당지 총으로 그래서
So these three of study or hearing, contemplation, and meditation are really practiced together, all together, indivisibly, or they should all be present. And what is the target, or what is the objective of these practices? It is really to end this this wandering, this cycle of endless wandering in samsara, or cyclic existence, where again and again we are caught within the we're trapped within the cyclic existence, which is the nature of suffering. So if we really identify what is the cause of the suffering of cyclic existence, this cause, or the root, is the mind of self-grasping. It is this self-clinging attitude, which is really the source of all of our difficulties and problems. So the root is self-grasping, and then all of the afflictive emotions arise based on, or are supported by, or arise because of the mind, that single root of self-grasping, the self-grasping mind. So then we have all of the various afflictive emotions, craving and aversion, anger, jealousy, anxiety, arrogance, and so on. And so the root, or the one who is really the cause for all those emotions, is that self-grasping attitude, the self-centered objective. And so as we engage in Dharma practice, as we engage in these stages of studying, contemplation, and meditation, the mind of self-grasping starts to diminish little by little. So it isn't an immediate thing. It's not easy to overturn this mind of self-grasping. It's not something that we can expect to suddenly happen, or to come easily. But through consistent Dharma practice, throughout on an ongoing basis, then we'll start to see that the attitude of self-grasping has really started to diminish, that it really becomes less and less.
이내양 가서 다 탑이요래. 그러와 가서 탑을 요래. 가서 랑체스 요래. 탑카레. 랑체스 요어데 가서나 가서 원이 지나 보다 내죠. see a pure mind. go perfect. 그러와 complete. 가서 다 시대버리 닝보 요래. 그러나 이게 가서 그 줄라 랑체케 다 당직 님보래. 다 당직 독초 opposite. 대 가르세나 참바리 닝지리.天对我做让起的人家要的那不多，唐不结尾搞了，这个让起给人家听的要的什么说的水面呢？人家要的这么多，别呢，现在把这个听的拉不的是，现在的话 science，天对天呢，国际不穷穷，听的卡查嘛些话，给这一嘛些话不穷穷，但到话别的，这说么些啊，都听的人别搞了，天呢这，第一拍照了这。picture라고 지 데모라고 picture라고 딘디라 테네지 배 파서 참본라고 지 딘네 딘디라고 배 자완라고 지 제지라 로판라고 지도 그런 딩몰라 따네 코로나 복티양네 그 셈라티 지 대완라고 닝긴라고 제기거리스 테네 지 파르죠 데 picture라고 이나리 지 발렌스라고 티니 지비나 코로나티 희나라고 지 티네 마가와 용구요레스 좀센 틀레테네 코카스나 랑치스라 지 pena pu kam do ina de nga zo rangchi jula ningje yores wa nga zo chamba yore ningje yore tinde indu ko nga zo ke chi tanda tangzi ka pa ke ta kharse go 자라는 마소나 지 투 차상을 좀 요래스
And so we have, as the very basic essence of our being, the Buddha nature. So actually, in essence, our minds are completely pure because we have the ground or the basis that is the Buddha nature, Tathagata Garbha. And so this is present. We have the seed is present, but in order to cause the obscurations of self-grasping to diminish, so that we can really merge with that pure essence, then we have to develop, or we have to apply an antidote. So the antidote is the opposite of self-grasping. The opposite of self-grasping is love and compassion. So everyone has the potential to develop great love and compassion. The seed of compassion or love is present in all beings. In fact, even scientists have said that very small children, even just a few months old, like 3, 4, 5, 6 months old, they sometimes will respond in a way to like pictures. So for instance, if there's a video or a picture of something that expresses gentleness, love, or people helping one another, the child reacts to this in a way that expresses that they can identify the positive qualities of love and compassion. They become happy and they smile, and there's a reaction that is one of a kind of having this identification with the love, a loving attitude of compassion. And then if you show the child images of violence or something, violent or hateful, then the child becomes disturbed and they express a fear. They understand the negativity of that is the understanding of the negativity is instinctual. And so this indicates this that the qualities of love and compassion are actually there, present from the very beginning. And so in order to chala kare the dagsimpang chala tuomangboyore. And so all we have to do is encourage those innate qualities of love and compassion to grow. We have many tools or things available to us that we can employ in order to relinquish or abandon the mind of self-grasping.
However, yang asoji ko karsedia ti chembo chawi kala yang ado dangzi develop ro chaji ti nga seaji yungu yorwa nga zidi pedeji 쇼체르 노고요래 다 이나 제탕 nga 세야데 고 강사 참 직파 직창 요 말에 nga 히 직고 당지 총아 요래 nga 히 당지 침모 요래 이나야 다도 가스나 지 nga 세야지 nga에 기치드 라드 되지 가리나지 nga 세야지 럽고요래 베나차샤나 니마 자와르 모치 송로와 되네 랑동 카유 라요레스 현동 민마 생생레스 지금 랑 통다로지네 배지 틀레배 지금 샘게 땡레파 드로치 되네 지금 랑 통다 드롭고야로 지금 지금 랑키네 지금 배 immediately 되니 지하 지금 노바로지 럽고요로 그 당지요로 다디 다지 현 지금 로바지로 치고라나 되네 다 참네 카기 지금 랍스 그래 그 옵션 콜로로 치고 그래 야야냐로 치고 너 라고요래 이내야 통오버가 그 샘게 되리 디퍼 메이장 그 액션들 내가 말와 되네지 맥노 되네 오야야 고샤자 따로 같이 그래 세야로지 마도 베기 주카요라 용구요 말 근데 인도 다디고 당지 디게 가서 챙로 가서 될라고도 조가서 딕바 장고래 이제도 다 당실레 좀 마치 딕바 장고 센스와 네게티브 장고래 지파 딕바로 오지 두보로 오지 당원에 지는 딕바세야지 그 도도 파길래 테니지 요마르 딕바 장세야 돼 가장 것은 지금 랑긴 짐바 단기kin 짐바 당지테 테니 지 장라도 퍼미케이션 고 칼레 당지 총루 뭐야 돼다 딕바 장보라와 다디 장보라 집에 탑라 테네 가서 다 단다지 조지가 참만님들이 대단한 이게 땅아서 지 제렘을 때네 지 당진용으로 땅야 조렘을 때네 지 곰잡네 당진용으로 땅야 되는 하곰네다 지 땅 하곰야다 제렘 공소로 하곰네 되네 지 당진용으로 땅야 지가 다네 당진용으로 땅야 다 대단한 이게 지 단다 레칼레네라 포지티브 지 커뮤니티 센터 텐딜러 로파치네 오다 티네지네 고 당진용 따야디 답신도 이거래 텐디 땅에 당기 공티보다 타겟 가리라비나 믹사데 지금 가서 당지 텔레메고 좀생 가르세나 가서 디지털 메토드 해야 돼 당지 핵 말이야 와라 라래 버래
그래?
당지 핵라고 당지
그래 대화 토야라 라임에
no
봉다
대화 톱 당마톱 해야 돼 라와 당지고 담에 라래 그레스 당가도 텔라고도 짐바 핵라고도 당지 핵라고도 핵람나 답에나 다 상지브레라고 다 리즌 가서 포커스 가지고 타겟 가는 거라나 맞아 대신 도구로 와 대신 도구래 대신 도야 돼 가스나 가디 대신 더 버래 와 뭐니 대신 양타바 가디 더 그래 슬라비나 다 당지 미비니 못해 다 등에서요 말이야 기능 가서 등에 다양 말하신 등에 명양 말하신 라고도 지 강사 지기 줄라 당지 미비나 티게 강사 티줄라 등에 세야 되고 뇨야 루강라 뇨야 파쇼쇼 근데 그 등에 세야 그 다크라요 말이스 어딘데 인도 고카선다 데 레라 오제 토토야 요 말와 티는 가서 미기 테리스 다들 차르자 타면 백투도 어서
So, however, when we become older, it's like this mind of self-grasping becomes more and more solid or more and more developed. Of course, it isn't the same for everyone. Some have a greater imprints of self-grasping than others. For some, the mind of self-grasping is stronger, and for others, it is less coarse or less strong. But for all of us, for the most part, there is this underlying constant sort of mind of self-clinging or self-grasping. So, for instance, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has said, when it comes to one's own benefit or one's own purpose, there is there's this expression in Tibetan that's really kind of perfect. It's kayo layo, which is kind of difficult to translate, but it's like, it means like we act immediately. So when it comes to one's own purpose or one's own benefit, then there's this immediacy to doing what is necessary, to do whatever it is that's going to cause us some form of or another of benefit. But when it comes to another person's purpose or benefit, then the attitude is like, I'll get around to it. So there's not this kind of immediate response. The response is not as immediate as it is when it comes to one's own agenda or one's own purpose or benefit. When it comes to one's own purpose or benefit, then it's a priority. So we respond with immediacy. But again, when it comes to the purpose or benefit of others, there's not so much importance attached to that. It doesn't have the same level of priority. And there might be, of course, the wish, to help and to think, oh yeah, I would like to help that person, or I want to help them. But there is a delayed response, and very often it is the case that we have the intention to help or benefit others, but we really put it off. There's this attitude of kind of, oh yes, okay, I'll get to that. And yet when it comes to oneself, there's this immediacy in our response. And so this is because of the mind of self-grasping. And so in order to purify negativity, so when we talk about purification, purifying the obscurations or negativity, it's not as though negativity or the obscurations are like this sort of solid thing, some sort of material thing to clear away or to purify. But through
also the log samsung to the negative love the defilement negative telecation or break samaya jigbe huge chibari ta ko be ko la dipache moyor no tindikecha maris lo zo kasana ko danzi telete tini yonguyores tindite ko danzi yong ta yaris ta dipa jan se yadi mato tini tele lost your jan ta yo maris.
And so that sometimes also there's a lot of fear around negativity. So there's this thought of, or the obscurations or defilements or, being fearful of a sort, for instance, like breaking samaya, thinking of it as this almost like an external thing. But really the heart of all negativity, the heart of all obscuration is this single root of self-grasping. So as long as the objective to diminish this mind of self-grasping, as long as we are employing the methods to cause that mind of self-grasping to diminish or become less and less, then we are really purifying negativity. Then we are upholding our samayas or our sacred commitments. And so really there are so many methods that achieve this in the Dharma. Mainly it is through generating love and compassion. But with love and compassion as the basis, engaging in the practices of the generation stage, engaging in the practices of the completion stage, these are all methods that chip away at that root of self-grasping. When we recite mantra, we are causing the mind of self-grasping to diminish. When we engage in positive efforts to help and benefit others, participating in work or activities to help the community or to help the Dharma center, then you are causing the mind of self-grasping to diminish. So really the entirety of Dharma practice all comes down to this. It is really a path of gradually causing the mind of self-grasping to become less and less. And when the stronger the mind of self-grasping, then the more suffering there is. So suffering is directly proportional to the mind of self-grasping. And so if we cause the mind of self-grasping to diminish, then we have a greater and greater degree of well-being and happiness. And Buddhahood itself, what is enlightenment or what is Buddhahood? It is when the mind of grasping, the mind of self-grasping has become completely dissolved, when there's no longer any grasping there, that is Buddhahood. That is the experience of Buddhahood. So this is really our focus, and the objective of the focus is to achieve happiness and well-being. That is the direct result of clearing away or causing the mind of self-grasping to diminish. And when that practice becomes so thoroughly developed, when we really have fully purified this mind of self-grasping, then there is no longer any suffering. And the full potential for this is present in the mind streams of all beings. Because the self-grasping itself is the nature of it is incidental or adventitious in nature. It is a temporary obscuration. The real essence of your being is a complete purity, freedom from the mind of self-grasping. And so therefore it is fully possible to chip away at this mind of self-grasping and to develop deeper and deeper levels of well-being and contentment through that absence of self-grasping.
Tene de la imba pena cha yawi na tene the jik dangzi mewa cha bi na tene be dunge da yo maris tema chi be dunge da yo maris la imba.
So when the mind of self-grasping is completely dissolved or completely cleared away, there is no suffering. There's not even the name or the word suffering.
There's not
even the sound of suffering, right, more accurately. So this isn't like to be, kind of preachy. It's not as though he's saying, oh, you guys need to clear away the mind of self-grasping, or you all have self-grasping or something like that. No, actually, we're all in this together. And this is just same path. And this is
same focus.
Okay. Yeah. This is just Dharma practice for all of us.
What I think Tirana Yiki Yang, not a some grova Sameta, Samanga to the customs and it in Euro, Dana, or Lamata Chimbodo, Genetic, not realization to grace Amado the Yang, special teaching the high teaching the Yang, and a realization to grace Amba Yoris. Yina Yang ko that tongue me tone. Dealing suchi googles na ranchiare mato beke kisi lama main chimbo no chik ta lama za chimbo yu sigiri ta main sia de ta lama sia de ko mambo yorwa bene shitsuke lama ata chik ta nga ta karse go woli sense la ya chik lama la chen sia do lama de be za chimbo ri sia thindi yonggu yore ko tga na yike chi lama za chimbo yimba ta ko na lama za chimbo ya yong sigirwa yina yang
chi kare chi
lama ke jitama la munisa yina jitanda relative level nga ta tindi yores chi lama za chimbo de se ya no ta jikan bi ke jikan thakpa la wa jikan na tindi yore yina ta chi zo karsina kazang kong hyuwa na yide chi lama za chimbo se ya di kazang hyuimba kazang ngoma ji hyuimba ga he 창조 선바든지 배 라마자 첨보세요 창조 선바로와 되는지 가히베 지 메인 첨보치네 창조 선바든지요 요래 창조 선비 주대네 고지 오다 고 창조 선바데샤 선바로 치네 창조 선바 요래 양 가히베 창조 선바로 주는 메와 빼 코란지다 콜라 개그치면 가장 라임바 타와 주마 메자 주마고 좀 지켄디나 강야 깨다 맹게 강야라 지 recognize 맹게 강야 맹게라야 장저 선바 열와 딜리 용구요 치 yina zo karsana ta ko ji kindi ke ji chi yu le den nga ta zo karsana toya da kartop go yo la wi na ma zo ji wa to do ti do long do top go yo chi la ma le den yang wo hak pa tu gi ne ji lama ordinary lama la me ma thanda ji thande ki lama thini ten go yo 이 라와 데라와 라마 데라와 바나 단데 라마데 가디 상제레 하벤고 송도와 가디 침보레스 라마데 예네야 다 라마티키치 당지 참마 라마티키 빠 투그레베스나 투그마레스 수치그 인디비주얼리 테네다 당지 빠야 그 탑치그레 마도베 라마 카시자 첨부 이미나 라마티키지 강사티키 당지 메와 소토고 말와 베나 상제송으로와 네네 추나 타르와 타베유스 타르와 란레 라레 헤바데 다 초랑 타르와 터 메탑세 초랑 지가레 송도와 데마다다 상제래야 닝지키 다니레 데네 코랑 상제레 상제사레 데네 고 상만도와도 상마데 야 당지도 상 메와서 되네 야 상지 주로 토고 말이고 당가서 미유디 믹사디 그러면 거기서는 제 알아서 속에 당지 티가는 간지스도 다 메고 그래서
So, of course, in this tradition, there is a great importance placed upon the spiritual teacher. And so there is great reverence for those lamas or spiritual teachers who have great realization. And sometimes there is this attitude that, and of course, in some cases or in some ways, of course, there is great blessing to be experienced when coming into contact with a highly realized being, a spiritual teacher who is truly profound and very special. But at the same time, it is not as though we can fully rely on simply the qualities of an externally present teacher or a high, a realized master. So there are great beings who have appeared in the world. Some of them are recognized, as great beings, and some are maybe very famous and they have a big name. And in a worldly sense, they are recognized as powerful teachers,
popular
or they're very popular. But then there are also those who are not necessarily seen as being great masters. There may be, just as we described yesterday or last week, there are those bodhisattvas who appear in the world that really nobody has any idea.
like some bodhisattva serva penakora bodhisattva na yitengi yorwa the some bodhisattva kind thing
so some bodhisattvas appear in the way that we would expect bodhisattvas to appear, or their expression or their sort of the way that they appear in the world is like we would expect the appearance of a bodhisattva to be. But then there are some bodhisattvas who don't necessarily seem, at first glance as though they really might be a bodhisattva. Like, for instance, the other day when this topic came up, as was mentioned, there are many stories of of just ordinary monks, for instance, in Tibet, who are kind of, nothing special, no big name. Everybody, in fact, they even kind of may be like a beggar. Just nobody really thinks that they're anything special at all. But then when they die, they manifest all of these miraculous signs. So there are all of these incredible signs that appear, and no one really had any idea all along that they were such a highly realized master or practitioner. And so in any case, there are all varieties of great teachers who appear in the world, those who are recognized as such or venerated as such, and those who are real hidden masters, or those who are not recognized as such. And yet still, regardless of this, and even though, of course, we say that the Lama or the spiritual teacher is incredibly kind. In fact, the kindness of the spiritual teacher is said to be even greater than that of the Buddha himself.
Ordinary Lama, ordinary Lama.
Generally, like for the ordinary Lama, is incredibly kind. Their kindness is even greater than that of the Buddha himself. And yet, still, when it comes to the blessings and guidance of the spiritual teacher, the Lama, they still cannot cause the mind of self-grasping to diminish for you.
Okay.
No. Oh, okay.
Top race.
So the ordinary,
why this Lama?
So the reason why the Lama is so precious, or why it is necessary to rely on the spiritual teacher, is that is the vehicle through which we can receive the empowerments, transmissions, and teachings. And then based on having received those empowerments, transmissions, and teachings, it is necessary to take the further initiative or the further steps to actually engage in the practice. Because when it really comes to causing the mind of self-grasping to diminish, this is something that one has to do for oneself. The Lama cannot do this for you. It really is up to the practitioner to create the causes for themselves, to actually engage in the practice, and to cause the mind of self-grasping to diminish, and thereby progress on the path of liberation and awakening. Just as the Buddha himself has said, I can show you the way, or I have shown you the way, but it is up to you, or it depends on you to actually follow my instructions, or to actually traverse the path for yourself, to actually create the causes for the fruition to actually manifest. And so if the Buddha himself has said this, and the Buddha is the embodiment of a great compassion, or the self-nature of great compassion, if the Buddha could just lift or sort of wipe away or clear away the suffering and self-grasping of beings, then he would definitely do it. He would do that, but that is not how it works. It has to, this is something that one has to do for oneself by progressing, engaging in the practice, and actually turning the mind within and doing the work that is necessary in order to gather the accumulations and purify obscurations.
다 배변송도 차샤고 나가다 어머니 배면 홍세야지 다 정도 참 하고로 테니다 제당 제렌세 가 테니다 제당 아월로 테라우도 배나 산스크리트도이나 테네 아월로 그디 효라 라부도아 테네다 지 법의 기책라 테네 tela gore da jeren se la gore jeren six tiga na yi ki ta ji jana ke kwanyan la budo ta thonda jetang da konyen se ya da omani be no yin se ya da dawo cha di yore konyen se ya di ji sa ta muk sok no ji do
Vage kare.
sa ta mo no ji do mo sna ko do
De pumo.
thì bên này cha nó ngắt chỉ tao 이게 통마다 요미 이게 통마라 그러와 딱 ngắt 지 계란색 그 포베기 계란색이 제당 ngắt 지 폭소 넘버 요로와 계란색交通 진동이나리 계란색 차시와 이나리 양 계란색 심리 연수세야 지요래다 근데 리디나 양다고 계란색 아마보 요로와 두지 친구가 알았더니 정보 요리 통보 요리 이나다 제당 어머니 빼면 홍수야 돼 이게 통효로 와 되는데 제당 가서 요미 얘기 좀 마스 제당 가서 많이 와나 트린도 요미 얘기 좀 말아 듣니 지 빼나 자나 그 고년도 된다고 거기 차디여서레스
So with the recitation of the Mani mantra or Chenrezig's mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, which is the mantra of Chenrezig, or in Sanskrit it's Avalokiteshvara. In Tibetan, the name Chenrezig actually means, to look upon beings with every eye. So this is referring to his 1,000 arms and his 1,000 eyes that look with great compassion upon beings. And then in Chinese, Chenrezig is Kuan Yin, who is actually female. But the mantra actually also, even though Chenrezig is male or is depicted as male in Tibetan iconography, the mantra itself is referred to as feminine. So the mantra is the goddess of the 6 syllables, Yige Drugma. And so the form of Chenrezig is masculine, but the mantra is actually feminine. And there are many mantras. Chenrezig, actually, it's not just one mantra. There are the longer, sort of longer or the extended mantra, middle length mantra, and the concise mantra. And so Om Mani Padme Hum is actually the concise mantra, or sort of the shortest length mantra. Rebe.
네, 다 되는데 다 제당 가서 Om Mani Padme Hum 중다 Om 세야지도 Om 세야들라다 근데 이게 3 syllable 요러고 벤나 아 요래 되네 나로 요래 마 요래 Om 세야지 요러와 Om 세야디 가르치는 거 요래 슬라브나 되네 차라 글릉아 예종 총그래 송래 즉 차와 당라화와 차라 글릉아 예종
So when you break down the mantra of the 6 syllables, so the first syllable of the mantra is Om, and actually there are 3 letters or 3 syllables within the single syllable Om. So there's A, there's what is in Tibetan called Naro, which is essentially like the O sound, and then
vowels.
Or the vowel, and then there's Ma, so it's A, Naro, or O, and Ma, and these 3 together make the syllable Om. And so what is contained within the syllable Om, the actual physical expression, or sort of like the coarse aspects of body, speech, and mind. Chara?
Chawa Rakpa.
Oh, both subtle and coarse aspects of
Chawa Rakpa, Hind Chawa.
So actually 3, the coarse, the subtle, and the extremely subtle aspects of body, speech, and mind.
대인이다 단기 컨트와 나이다 가서 냠내지네 대가스나 가서 다 마다 뱅고라 가서 다 데려와 룽아이 좀 세야들이다 용몽배 지금가서 대요와 배는 류지고는 메게와 좀 아까고는 메게와 해 이지고는 메게와 좀 스타 라파리베 로 메게와 텐데 요레스 티네 야야 손도 다 티네 야 창으로 로네 기타 되는 것도 티는 가리지네 이거 마다 박바탕스 티네 힌드 넘버 코렘킨스
Shindu.
넘버 타바라와 힌드 넘버 타바 어 테나이 송바나이 테네 당보 마다 빌룽아이 좀 로와들 다 라바 다티 칼레 야 냠네 칼레 창운데 테네 직 차와 테네 직 용모바다 다 기타는 용모만 하는 것도 해지되와 용모베되와 세야지 해지되와 여러와 테네 해지되와 차거를 테네 라바 마다 차와와 테네 힌드 차와들이 다 배짱마짱장 룽아이 좀 테네 가서 직 님데 요 와나데 베나루 카레데 nirvana kaya nga samboga kaya tene kare I dharma kaya rwa o tindi tene hindu mada tabada hindu namda korem ki na de tene hindu namba tabada tene ji gui ye nga ye ji dani tene ji chang gu rwa te yang te jambar chi wala tan kon thi wa na ji re be ji lama ro ji ke ngo te do wa chi de chang te to bres ji khang ge ko wa 나는 여러와 되네 텐디 배 고송도 롭토그레 해야지 랍그 요래 이나티 고송도 롭이야데 다 칼레 가서 뭐 냠냠진 롭 먹으러 되네 칼레 되면 잘 그러겠어
So from the perspective, like from the impure perspective, of course, body, speech, and mind, we have the imprints of the defilements, which are based on kind of mainly the different karmic stains of the 10 non-virtues. So the 3 non-virtues of the body, the 4 non-virtues of speech, and the 3 non-virtues of the mind. And then as one purifies these coarse obscurations to a greater and greater degree, as then the 3 doors of body, speech, and mind become more and more purified, and likewise they become more and more subtle. So actually through the practice of the generation stage, in this case, for instance, the example is in the recitation of the 6-syllable mantra, then one is the body, speech, and mind are going from completely coarse to more and more levels of refinement, becoming more and more refined or more subtle. So it goes from impure to less impure to pure to thoroughly pure to completely pure. And so it's a gradual progression that happens through practice in stages. This is what occurs through the practice of the generation stage. So first, the experience of a body, speech, and mind are very coarse. And together with that is a lot of grasping, self-grasping and grasping to true existence. And then the course, that which is really connected with the course, are the coarse afflictive emotions. So we have the coarse obscurations of the afflictive emotions, and then there are the subtle, the more and more subtle aspects of obscuration, which are the varying levels of obscuration of the cognitive obscurations or the obscurations of knowledge. And so as one moves from coarse into subtle to greater and greater degrees, one becomes, the 3 doors become purified to a greater and greater extent until it becomes very, very subtle, and then just a complete and total purification. And then when there is a total purification, then the 3 doors actually become the pure appearance or the pure deeper phenomena of the three kayas. So the body is the Nirmana kaya, speech becomes the Sambhoga kaya, and the mind becomes the Dharma kaya. And so one finally becomes the self-manifestation or the embodiment of the four kayas and the five wisdoms. And so the condition for this to become or the necessary condition for this to occur is this spiritual teacher receiving empowerment, transmission, and teachings from a qualified lama or spiritual teacher, which plants the seed or creates a kind of the basis for this level of these progressive levels of purification to occur. And so the process of empowerment itself is like planting the seed or creating the foundation. And so, as you know, from when you have received the empowerment, then the Lama says, now you have the basis for accomplishing enlightened body, speech, and mind, for manifesting the three kayas. But that is really just sort of the creating the base or planting the seed or creating the condition, the basis condition, which has to really actually then be fully developed, or one has to traverse the progressive stages through actual practice. So when we practice the generation stage, that is what is happening, are these deeper and deeper levels of refinement, or going from coarse to gradually more and more subtle, which likewise corresponds with purification, greater and greater degrees of purification.
티니 다 같이 옴 세야들이 다 티슈를 마네라고도 마네스 옴 마네스 야다 다 마네스 야데 제가 하고 줄라고도 산스크리트 줄. 다 줄세야 돼 가르쳐나 가서 공동 용비 너버 송래. 아 공동 용비네 가서 가래 고 톱그래 송래. 디인디 다 디게 다 공동 용이야 가니 톱그래. 삼노 땅비나 땅원에 지 잠바당 닝게 장저 셈네. 공동 용토보다 너바 가리요나 공동 용세야 돼 능에 매바지로 와 디인디다 단기 콘티브가 나이리 지 능연 중세께 짜와디 당지리 말에 당지리 라인바 이나 참바 다닌지 오나 당지요 말와 어때인디다 뭐네 노르데 가리세나 다 참바 닝지 장저 셈텔라 되네 다 공동 용 가르고나 노르바 동ар 탐지를 토르토바 당지 벤진데 막 당지 쇼침보다 막 얘토바 알아? 좀 더봐
동ar 탐지 들어와
동ar 베기 잘에 토르토바 알아? 당지 얘기는 당지에 배차 보여 다 이제 막 너는 이제 여러봐 이렇게 참바더니 또로 그랬어 가야 짬마짬냐고 간 블로 치토 그랬어 진짜 블로 같이 그랬으나 조 가르스나 주 당지 또르베 째네 근데 능에 참마다 매바차 알아 어다 팀이 너르리 가서 섬노 야보 땅비나 땡도와 너르 나게 너르세나 너르들이 집어요라고 그러 너르요나 다 갈고나 통그리라고 그러와 배는 지케나 섬노 땅비나 지 지소 그리오지를 배 파토 참바다 닝게배 tum보요나 통마 침세나 집어요라고 배 다들 너르 나기로 와 집어요래 배는 가서 빼지요래 너르베지 요레스 너르 gond도 근영세야지 너르베지 요레스 가상디 디엠바 저보티 땡베 스토리 보탄 스토리
디야 보시라 땡기도
된 너르베 고진 바탕 요르베 이제 퍼티키네 고 저보베 하사야 콘도 사요로 인다 다소게 이네 카츠나다 나도
maybe they mangda they masungna yagre samgda So first we have the syllable om, and then the next word in the mantra is mani, which is a Sanskrit word that means jewel. So what does the jewel mean? So actually this jewel is referring to a wish-fulfilling jewel. So wish-fulfilling jewel is something from which everything that is needed and desired issues forth. So a wish fulfilling jewel produces everything that is needed and desired. And so what is it that really produces everything that is needed and desired? It is love and compassion. So actually this jewel, which is the source of everything good, of all goodness and everything that is needed and desired, the real jewel is the jewel of love and compassion. Because really everything that is needed and desired springs forth from compassion. If the more and more developed the mind of love and compassion, then the less pain and suffering there is. So if there is only great love and compassion in the mind stream, then there is no suffering. And the cause of suffering, what is it that produces suffering? It is the mind of self-grasping. And so since love and compassion are the direct opposite, or that which causes the mind of self-grasping to diminish and disappear or dissipate, then it is the source of complete freedom from suffering. It's that which clears away all suffering. And so the mind of self-grasping is like a hard stone. It's like a solid rock. It's a hardened stone, a hardened thing. And then the love and compassion like actually explodes or blows up the stone. And so in that way, this love and compassion is like the wish fulfilling jewel from which everything that is needed and desired issues forth. Because once there is love and compassion, then there is only joy and happiness. And so in that way, it is really like a jewel. Even if we think about, for instance, in our outer environment and our relationships with others, in community, or in whatever environment, when there is mutual love and compassion there, then everybody is happy. Then that is really a pleasant environment.
Tening at the Tibet story, Tini Yorwa, Nurbuji Yoris, Ben Jacob de la Tini Jarbola, Jarbosinaku, Nurbuji Yori, Labgrawa. Tini Nurbiti Kojita, Jacob Kona, all the kingdom, entire kingdom, Jigbe, Karagon and drop to Grace, Yakojita, Tondo, metaphor. Tini Yor starting on it in a Doyore. Carcinati, Choji did, Koda, Tondo, Choji did, Tiniri. Pena Jaru Pomondo, Ninjik, Dani Janjina, Kolunga, the Joyungua, could never know it. Tigana Yike, Chik Chungsanda, line, but under Chik. Not never in a day. Tigana Yi Chung Chungjuina, Nasa Sanjik, parts all sincerely, Jik Dangzikuna Mahami, sincerely, Sabaji Yubina, then one age Gondunju, Chim Santik, peaceful Chaviawa. Tindu Nekaviantene, Dechi Jachamo Toptova, Tiniji Yungures. Yangati Juchine, then Tato Yang Sanji Komotoviak. You check your estimate and not nervous yet. Tes so nervous yet on that on money bemong yours yadi. So the cousin Chamata Ninji chat yours.
So there's a Tibetan story about a king who ruled his kingdom with total benevolence, and so he was said to be like a wish fulfilling jewel, the king.
No,
or there was a wish fulfilling jewel.
Yeah, there was wish fulfilling jewel.
Okay.
Your estimate, that Jacob Samakin Dominic to Laugro, Nursia, that they only Nurbit your love.
So there was, this king had a wish fulfilling jewel, and with this wish fulfilling jewel, all of the needs and desires of the kingdom were fulfilled.
Yeah, kingdom.
Yeah, the people, kingdom, the entire kingdom. Dini? The
metaphor, in a banner, reality, Kariosena, when the Jarbokora in Yuvina, 지 원에 학산남다 돌아 임지 용케이나 되네 그 entire kingdom 되네 노르나 이베 지로 지보는 거와.
So this is really like a metaphor because what is it that really causes like a kingdom or a country or a place or a region to flourish? It is when it is governed by an attitude of
sincerely this
benevolence. You know, when the ruler has no self-grasping or no self-clinging, and then really their objective is to benefit the people. And so then all of the there is, you know, happiness and kind of harmony and genuine like respect between the people of the community and so forth. And so really in this way, when there is love and compassion, it's really like a wish fulfilling jewel. And we can see this in any context, like whether it's among neighbors, you know, in a neighborhood, or in a household, within a family. If the members of any community or in any relationship, if the people treat one another with a genuine or sincere love and compassion, then there is happiness and joy all around. And so in that way, it really is like a wish fulfilling jewel. Love and compassion are the true wish fulfilling jewel.
temporarily to the yours.
So temporarily, so meaning in a temporary sense, it becomes the cause of all happiness and joy. And also in an ultimate sense, it becomes the cause of happiness and joy because these are the causes which lead to the ripening of the full fruition or the ultimate fruition of liberation and full awakening.
Tene da pema lagudo o mani peme se da pema lagore da pema se ya di jeta nga da pema se ya di je barwa pema se ya da ji me do tu je ung yo de da de yang tene da tonda da kar chung yo se da herab chen bo ro tene ji nga tu nya ma yo 닝지 강라테네 혈압제 고그래 소리 닝지 찍부게 닝지 장베게 지양 심장 랑당 현인자 통도도야 각보러 와 디니티네 지 닝지당 테네 지 혈압세야 다 통당 거마데 혈압데 갈스나 혈압 동반이라고 동반이 통 디니티네 지
So then the next the next word in the mantra is Pema. So Om Mani Padme or Pema, which it means lotus. And so what we are talking about when we with the word lotus, or what lotus represents there. So what are the qualities of a lotus? If you think of like a totally blossoming, a thoroughly blossomed or expanding lotus, like a fully blooming flower. And so what this represents is great wisdom. So the lotus itself is the lotus of great wisdom, because we have to have love and compassion. But in addition to compassion, we also must have wisdom. If we only have compassion, then that itself is not sufficient. In addition to compassion, or with only compassion, you cannot bring about the complete benefit of oneself and others. In order to do that, you have to have wisdom. And so wisdom is the wisdom which realizes emptiness, the truth of emptiness.
어다 디엔두테네 다 돈이 닝제 세나리 돈이 혈압 송든 족바 텔라 테네 지 홍세야다 오마니 빼면 홍라고도 다 되지 미식 봐 소리 다 텐데 베 셀노 베 템보 와 지 돈이 닝제 혈압 송든 족바디 다 탈바 탐진 침비 컴포드가게 다 탑 세나리 chot churba team bari ta tiyang tene ji rang ke tene ji namba kun de la tene nga chon den de ba ro rang ke ju yu de ba oda tindi tela ji tela yan jora te ma so ba pe nimaji hira yu nimaji hira me wan ro nimaji ningje yu nimaji ningje me wan ro tindi ma yin ba tene ji ngone tu ju de tene ongni ningje 성돈 줘봐 그러와 혈압 성돈 줘봐 근데 제가 민조로와 라우도 냐만 노르제 빼고와 민조로
Just a cook kale ni machik ninja yo ni machik me tene
오다 텐도 많이 봐봐 배는 냐마지 혈압 유 냐마지 혈압이 라고 텐데 많이 봐봐 아 테네 맞지 동니 닝지 성돈 줘봐 돼 조라메 바랑 그 줄이 요와 배는 가서 뭐 노르지에케 뺀도와 노르지 라 tene doji tonda khare labdu tene sawa temba
sawa temba
mihegba menjorwa ta la soba yorwa o da tena yi tene ji ti hong se ake tan song to pres
So then the next letter, the next word in the, not letters, well, is also a letter, but the next word in the mantra is hung, the syllable hung. And so what this represents is the indivisibility of wisdom and great compassion. So the total, this is sort of like the seal of ultimate bodhicitta, which is emptiness pervaded by great compassion. And so it's like the indestructible seal. So it's that which sort of creates stability, meaning that this indivisibility of emptiness and great compassion is made unshakable. So the non-dual union of method and wisdom, which is there as the essence of one's own mind stream. So it is there within the mind as the indestructible nature. But then when it is fully realized, that nature is sustained and it becomes unchanging. So it's not as though, one day there's wisdom and then the next day wisdom isn't there, or one day there is compassion and then, the next day compassion isn't there. So there's no wavering. It's without increase and decrease, but it is like the completely unchanging, indestructible nature, which is like a Vajra. So the Vajra, which has the qualities of, being sort of solid and constant or unchanging and stable, which cannot be destroyed, the nature which cannot be destroyed, is unwavering, indestructible, and ever present.
unshakable.
And is unshakable. So this is what the hung syllable, what it embodies, is this unchanging nature. And it's also, sung tupa? Sung tupa or sung tu? No.
oda tiende ta jatanga ta tan kong thua na yire ta je manan ro ji tong di bi na ya a ji manu thong da ti ya bo ha ko bi na tene ngone thang ne ji ko dang zi jong ba ta ta ra ta ni je me ko ma thop thu gri thang nge kong thua na yire wa ga hyang ga chu sabo ji gu du se ya ji yo
So
re
dogs in chon ta. Sorry, chu sabo ji go.
chu sabo ji gu du la bi tene a ji chu ti ki pe ji chi nu gre sa ma yo zo ka se ko rang ki nyamne chi nga hi man ji bo to na sang ji gre nga hi jam ro ji bo to na sang ji gre ta nga hi ji ya ko de ko khang sa chang ma de ko nyamle la ko focus chi ma ji ro wa nyama ta pe na sha sha na pe che pan de adi sha in sa ro pan de adi sha la de ni de lab do ko chon ko jam ro la ma de jam ro la ma de nyama je korang ke disable ji de lab do ta rumbo ji pe che shimba de stream yak sa res 저 가두이나 점도 랍디네 되네 뭐참에 기초라 점도 라마 랍기도와 랍여와 텔레비전에 반에 되겠다 빼약 버리스타 나테 고이고스타 다 덱차오리스 다가 점도 남아인 다가 벤덱차리스 다 데려가고 말해 정도 어텐류다 강다야 조 가르스나가 조지 다추 삼자 말해 강사기 냠네 가리가 니위나야 단다 콘티와 나리베 만 찍보 동 대샤위나 고지 만 찍보
Gangsaki Nyamlin. Gangsaki Nyamlin choose Amasa Mare Gangsaki
인디비주얼
Nyamlin.
코너 냠네 컨디션이지로와
Mhm.
배나 차샤위나 강사지 많이 ton다 하고 많이 찍보 동디나 되게 어려워
Mhm. Mhm. So if you understand the just how extraordinarily profound the Mani mantra is, for instance, if you understand the meaning of the Mani mantra in this way, then only through practicing Om Mani Padme Hum, but through the recitation of this mantra, you can completely conquer the mind of self-grasping. You can completely overcome self-clinging. So really, actually, whether or not a particular dharma or practice is profound really has everything to do with the individual who is practicing, who engages in that practice. And so actually, if the practice of the individual is profound, then any of the methods of dharma practice can bring about the total, the highest result. So all of the dharma practices are actually the most profound of practices. So for instance, there are many who attain enlightenment only from practicing the Mani mantra. Through the Mani mantra alone, the practice of the Mani mantra alone. There are those who attain enlightenment through only practicing refuge, through the practice of refuge alone. So there's the story of Palden Atisha, who was known as the refuge Lama. And so one day, one of his disciples said, please, can you teach us something besides refuge, some other text or some other practice, or something other than refuge? You're really developing a reputation. You're becoming known as the refuge Lama. And Atisha's response was, well, that's really wonderful. That's perfect for me. That's fine for me, because there is nothing that is more important than refuge. So I'm happy to be known as the refuge Lama. So again, whether or not, it's not actually the Dharma that is profound, or, more profound or less profound. It's really the practice of the individual. It has to do with the individual who actually puts the Dharma into practice. So if you really understand the meaning of the Mani mantra, then just spending your whole life reciting only the Mani mantra is sufficient.
Okay, so now along with the time, so I think 37 practice, so I think 34. So Zumo Tsegji, Hiensam Chok Jorjing, Yarvizi, Jutsu Nyam Chorbi, Teacher, Hienji Yi to Mumbi, Sutopomba Jesselawins.
So now we're actually at the end of our time, but in any way to at least begin with the text, where to pick up on the verse where we left off. It's verse number 34, which says, because harsh words disturb others' minds and cause the bodhisattva's conduct to deteriorate, abandoning harsh speech, which is unpleasant to others, is the bodhisattva's practice.
다 제당 대종래더니 나도 책을 송자미데 뮤크 셈라 tumbutom로 그래서 뮤크 냥라 tumbutom로 그래 대는다 조금 가서 깨져라비네 가라 삼랭 가서 트디션로지 깨져대 파ጆ라 물라베 지 노바 용야 계지 라비아 그 탑히노 뭐 지기요라 와 habit 이낭원이 지나 삼노 땅비나 지 깨져라빌라 아다그 이용 그러지 꾸노 피차니 당양 지 갑독 라야 닝 거래. 디니다 책 갑도 라비아 탕 삼노 땅고 그러와 책 딘디지 간디치 탕보 애나라이즈 치고 그러와 책 딘디지 라비나 콜라 가사레 콜라 마가 가사 마리 삼바 테네라오지 콜라 마가비나 테네 뭐니 치 메게 와로와 책 노몬도오지 아토타 타피노 치기로 공소지 오 콜랜지 낙본도오지 지 랜드 본도오지 그러와 랜 코션이나리 양나 지 깨잘라비나 티스지 고랑게 당진도오지 야 휴침본도오지 치치테네 강다양 아직 티스지 깨자데베 갈세 그래 아타 지 베네게치나다 mamboyorta 지나 mambo 이나다 가시다 지 harsh word 책도 보트니 마이비나 참참상 가서 지 normal 게차이나 티스야 sabzab chigu kule stage parjon de lavina ko gasare gasamare sambando chi samotango gro tini je la samotango gre tini tate chegro ba thangbotre the second
Okay.
second karsin zobo gulong re ta yang kashi chi gulong sambo kili yona yang tini jig seg this ko nyemborang mina digi yore bena ji gashi yang seg nyembo jang la dina 편도시다 요 말와 티인디티니 야지 그 꾸노 상보요나 지 랍자자 라고도 advice 너다 대가나지 딘딜라야 지 배나 파메게 삼사 파메게 보글레페 참보치야도 배책 참보치야도다 파메 삼사 참보치도 년게 메비나 야 아메 꾸노도 지파레 파메 꾸노 지바 티스지 다 에시아노 이나 티스 탁보 라고도와 탁모도 엠도 소 타본도 라고요 이네 강다 꾸노 기차네 지 주바메베케 사삼남다 꾸노 요비나 드네 야 고지 책이 인지미 딱 봐낸 게 뭐고야 드네 여사 말이스 이네 야다 조 가스나 지 단다 책다 가서 되어와 배는 가서 다 정하고 그래 지 나가 메게 해서야다 책도 다 메게 봐라 다 처음부터 숨도
So this instruction is very important. As is said, words are not weapons, yet they can have the power to cut somebody's heart. Sometimes we have a habit of saying all sorts of things without really being cognizant of how they impact or affect other people. So it's really important to be cautious or mindful with our speech. And so this caution or this mindfulness is twofold, and that there's the motivation behind the words, and then there are the actual words themselves and the way in which those words are spoken. So before we say something, it's good to analyze the effect that your words might have before the words actually leave your mouth, before you actually say them, to really think, will this, if I say this, will the recipient be gladdened by my words? Will they appreciate my words, or will they make them unhappy? Will they be disturbing in some way to the person who hears them? And so if we disturb someone else's mind through the words that we say, we're creating non-virtue. That is non-virtue. And so whether knowing the quality of your words, whether the words are good or bad, and really controlling the way that you say those words is really important. So sometimes, we can give rise to a mind of, sort of the mind of self-grasping rises up, or maybe we have a sense of righteous indignation or something, and then we'll very quickly utter some, clever retort or some sort of harsh response when our own mind of self-grasping has become inflamed, and then we might say some harsh words. which really can have a hurtful impact on another person, and also cause their non-virtue to increase. So generally, when it comes to harsh words, when we give rise to a tendency or an inclination to say something that we know is going to cut someone, to cut their heart, then it's important to refrain, to practice restraint. And if also when it isn't like, particularly harsh words, to just be careful in our ordinary speech, or when it comes to normal kind of talking, things that may not even seem like harsh words could still end up being hurtful to others. So it is extremely beneficial to really be mindful and cautious with our speech. So then the second aspect is the motivation. So of course, the motivation is the most important thing. So if there's a really pure or wholesome, like a genuinely good motivation there, then it isn't necessarily always the case that we should always, speak in a way that is really pleasant and kind and nice and sort of, with words of flattery and so forth. Sometimes actually we can say those words and really actually have a pretty negative motivation. So so if the motivation is one that is pure, and then maybe you say something that is seemingly a little bit more harsh, but it's really coming from a genuine motivation, like for instance, like in the case of a mother or father who needs to give their child some sort of, harsh advice, or maybe the parent isn't always gentle, like speaking in a gentle and kind way to their child, because they may know that sometimes if they're too gentle and kind, then the child isn't going to listen. They're not going to really hear them. So for instance, in Asia, he said we might have the custom of being, being a little bit more harsh and disciplining our children. So to have really make to be more strict, or to have to have a lot of rules. But when the motivation is really one of altruistic intent, or the motivation is really pure, then it isn't necessarily the case that you have to always be extremely gentle and kind with your words all the time. The most important thing is the motivation. But in any case, when it comes to practicing caution with our speech, we should always be mindful not to engage in speech that veers toward or falls into any of the categories of the four non-virtues of speech.
제가 나 양아도 삼삼삼삼삼 당그러 오 깨찰라비아데 전부 네기티브 렌사 말이스다 텔레페 루키미게나 소제야 꾸마자야 또 빅파 첨부 인사리 다고 깨찰라비아라다 틴디 빅파 첨부 말이 삼스기러와 이는 원에 지나 깨찰라비아 텔레테네 미게바 망보 원에 소제야리베 소 망보제야 깨찰라비아라 때네 용기거리 pena kecha lavya tayane chi pena ta cho jime inari nasa san thupa jaya thupa do ja khagan do ne pe chigi yore kecha malavina khoni khagan do yo marwa thupa jane tega na yi ke tan zambeling je kha ma ja bi yorwa ma ja bi tega sa tinggang khashi cha terrorism so ji kha zomne do ji yungre ma to general 파게절로 초게절로 두번째 되네 마자기로 되네 전환자명에 자기로 다 되네 진짜네 지금 뭐도 저도 동라만 보세 또 되네 지야디 꼭 깨절라는 용구요래서 깨절 말아와라 되네 마자야 용구요 말아와 되네 인디 되네 지고 가서 깨절라비아 될 할라지 개체모 말에도 삼구요래 되네 뭐니 지나 사마 메게 봐 소야 참만디 깨절라비아 될 빼면서 할래디 요래서 ngak mege pe masivi ke ko kharse gora tiga na itanda zumu tsek seya gido ta zubu tsek seya ti pe masivi ke ko negative chejo je chadi yoris Then delete the chik zumu tsaki jian chine tene chik mambo so chu gang neya. Tene chik ta tene chine tene paso chik chile chawa jaya ta kanda pe mambo yongsi girwa. Ine yang ta ti indu ko chik nga zuang tsek de wo ta tete chik vige wa chung chung re ke chala ya ta ke ye ge sa ma re ndo sa me so chik. Dis karse ko ta nawi se na tonang hira me wa ro chigirwa. Samo tang mi na chik ke chala ya ta pe ma se wi ke gane vige wa hyoche bu yung bi wa res.
So sometimes we sometimes we we discredit kind of the importance of being careful with speech. So like we may think, like, oh, it's just words, words never harmed anyone, or it's not so negative, it's not as negative as the other non-virtues. It's definitely not as negative as, the non-virtues of the body, like killing someone or stealing. But actually, speech can be extremely negative. It can lead to all sorts of really heavy negativities. And so for instance, if a couple says, carelessly says really hurtful or negative things to one another, then it, can cause more and more fighting, and then eventually can become the cause for their separation, or for, there to be, a lot of harm caused in a big split or separation. Also in the world, wars begin with speech, with negative speech, or terrorism. If it were the case that, those who then end up, engaging in horrible.
Except terrorism,
Oh. Oh, so never mind. Except for terrorism, where everything is very secret.
Not much communication.
And they don't really say, so maybe there's, like their threats aren't made, they're sort of like a quiet before, to keep things secret. Then in other ways, like on the world stage, there are, many wars or violence that begins, with something as that seemingly sort of innocuous, like speech, or through certain words. But so there are all sorts of really negative things that happen that begin with careless speech. So it's really important not to disregard speech, to not think, oh, like it's a speech isn't really so harmful. It's not so important to be cautious with speech. And that really is kind of an attitude that we can easily have. There's not, we tend to not take much care in really being cautious with what we say. But so much negativity and non-virtue can really come from speech. And in particular, harsh speech. When somebody says something really, hurtful or angry, or really says some harsh words to another person, then that person responds with harsh words, and before you know it, the situation has very quickly escalated into something that can really become quite destructive. So it's important not to take our words lightly, but to really have great care and caution with the words that come out of our mouths.
Right, they're more focused on money bemehon. More say things on money bemehon instead of other things. So that's it. So joking, okay. So we can finish here, and so there is some questions. If not, so we have to dedication. try doing.
No, do I mare.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Dedication.
So we can do the dedication prayer on page 24 of the prayer book. By the virtues accumulated in the 3 times, by myself and all beings and samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Dragongpa Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara.
Thank you. Good day, everybody.